Hey Cajon drummers, and welcome to another video. So finally, as promised, we are doing the live sound setup. Actually, I don't have my own studio and I don't have a whole lot of different microphones to test. This wouldn't be a video just like that, but I want to show you two different scenarios. So I've rented this like band rehearsal space. So there's a nice, really simple, easy to understand mixing desk and some like general purpose vocal microphones, as well as the microphone that I take with me to every live show that I play. So I want to just show you how to make the most of what could be a pretty bad setup for a live show. Sometimes you go to a venue and the guitar is going to be loud, the vocals are going to be loud, and you need the cajon to be a lot louder, and you don't want to beat your hands until they really hurt. So you're going to ask, hey, can we use a microphone for the cajon? And then the sound engineer might say, hey, we never have drums in this venue, so we don't have any drum microphones, but we do have these vocal microphones that you can use. And that's just my experience, but I want to show you how we can kind of make a really unideal microphone setup sound okay, and then of course I'll show you my ideal live cajon microphone setup. So let's get started. Okay, so here we are in the studio that I've rented. I've got the cajon set up here on this beautiful rug. It's quite a nice touch for a little hourly rental practice studio. But here's the microphone that is getting put to work today. So again, like a lot of the time when you're the one who has to worry about the live sound for your cajon, generally speaking, those are the venues that don't have the nice gear, that you're just using whatever's there. So I think this could be a really useful lesson, because when the venue's good and you've got nice gear, you're probably not worrying about the sound at all, because someone else is working there with all kinds of gear to do it for you. But here we go. Mic. This is the microphone that we're using right now. Coming down here, I haven't turned it on. Let's turn it on. Boom. Okay, so coming down here we've got the gain, which is very low. This microphone is designed for vocals, nothing with the kind of impact of a cajon, right? So that every time I hit it, if the gain is quite high, the sound pressure will be too much and the speakers will make that kind of crackly popping sound, which we call peaking, or hitting above the maximum volume, above the maximum decibels that it can handle. There is a comp for compressor, and that is to make the quiet sounds louder. At this stage with this microphone, everything is already too loud for it, so it's a little hard to get much use out of that. So if you haven't had much of a crash course in this stuff, the signal for the sound is going to come straight from the top and then come down the board like this. So the very fundamental stuff is at the top, at the start of the signal chain, we could call it. You come down and then you have an EQ. So there's the high, then we have our mid and low. So the low is quite powerful, so I've dropped that back. The mid to my ear just doesn't sound so nice, so I've dropped that back, and then the high, I've pushed it up as high as it can go. And that's just how we've gone so far. Hello once again, we're going to come over to the speaker so that your mix of the sound as the audience is more of a through the speaker sound rather than the direct sound of the cajon. So I'm going to basically put you up here so that you can watch from around about this position and hopefully hear a nice, accurate representation of the sound. Okay, now before I forget, I have some really important information. So if you've never played a live show before, basically there is a sound check where the sound engineer is going to try and get a nice balance for all the different instruments on stage. And even within that balance, try to get a nice EQ for each instrument. So the engineer might say to you, "Hey, cajon player, give me some cajon." And really that's not a time to like play the most cool and complex grooves that you know, play as fast as you can. Try to do the exact opposite. Try to play the simplest, like no messing around kind of rhythms that you can play. Because ideally, what that sound engineer needs to hear is just bass, 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 so that they can find a nice EQ for the bass, and then just snare, 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 so they can get a feel for that sound. And then they might ask you, hey, play a groove, play something more musical, and you can do that, but keep it simple. You might be tempted, like I think I was in that last demonstration, to put in some little rapu, gasha, shigadigidaku, doom. Those things are really just distracting from the purpose of that sound check, which is really just getting those balances and things right. A good variety is important. You want some fast, some slow, but as a general rule, you'll make better friends with sound engineers when you play something really simple and to the point, so that they can move on from that cajon and just be like, boom, that sounds good, next instrument. Okay, one last thing to cover before we move on to my ideal microphone setup. I forgot to mention, can you see this 80 here? Well, this little symbol, an 80, means that the frequency under 80 Hertz is rolled off. Yeah, we call this an 80 Hertz roll off. So the really low whoa, whoa, whoa kind of sounds that are under that 80 Hertz get taken out of this signal. So when we're working with a microphone that's really not ideal for the purpose, the back of the cajon with that sound hole there is pushing out a lot of whoa, 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 kind of low, kind of unbalanced low, disproportionately low noise, right? So then we can press that and we'll get a nicer signal. Let me just show you the difference. So this is off. And on. Okay, so even if you do prefer that first sound because it's got more bass, there's a chance that in doing that you're more likely to get that clipping or peaking issue that I described before, where the sound is too loud and you get this kind of whoa sounds that you don't like. And there we go. Okay, I promise we're going to move on to the ideal microphone setup very soon, but let me just show you these different EQ settings here. So this is the high, and here's how it sounds now. But we're going to drop it away. Bring it up. Okay. So I mentioned I've got the mids all taken out. So let's see what happens if I bring it back. Not a big fan of that sound. And the low. Okay, so I also promised to make this a nice step-by-step video, so let's get started by turning off this little mixing board, and let's unplug this microphone right here, and let's come back over here. Boom. We don't need you anymore. Okay. Actually, something that I've been doing recently that I think's pretty interesting is I've been taking one of these mats that are designed just to make the cajon more comfortable, but I've been putting it inside the Cajon. One as, I guess, a kind of dampening, but, you know, so shortening the sound, making it ring a little bit less, but just be more of a tight sound. But the other thing is that it makes a great little cushion for the microphone to sit on. Because this particular kind of microphone, you know, it's sitting directly on the object that's going to shake and vibrate, you know, when it makes a sound. So putting that in there gives it a nice little cushion, but I like to also use the case of the microphone as an extra cushioning layer, and that will go inside. Okay, so in some cases, this microphone can be plugged straight into the mixing desk with no other steps required. And we have to talk a little bit about something called phantom power. So the microphone, this microphone, you know, for whatever reason, I guess it's a simpler microphone. I'm not really a sound engineer, I'm not a big expert, but this kind of microphone doesn't need its own power source, right? It just takes the power that comes naturally through this line and it works. So no phantom power required. But this microphone, I don't know, maybe it's designed more to be used in studios where there is an abundance of power and things like that, but it requires power, so that's just good to remember generally. Now, in fact, this desk does have phantom power. It says phantom plus 48 volts, channel 1 to 5, 6 mic. So it looks like if I press this button, I'll get a nice power supply coming through any mic that I plug in. Some desks don't have phantom power at all. You just won't see a button, no information about phantom power. Some desks will have phantom power, but not on every channel. So maybe only channel 1 would have phantom power, and you might have a button that you can use for that. So be careful when you're doing something with a power supply like this. If I had the phantom power on the desk on, and power from this, you know, which is plugged into the wall, right, with a little power adapter, then I don't know how bad the consequences are, but I assume something blows up. So be really careful with that. So because this desk does have the phantom power, and again, many desks do, it's just sometimes that you don't, which is the reason I carry this with me everywhere, because I just want to be able to use my mic no matter what. If the desk doesn't have phantom power, and I don't have this, I can't use my mic, so I always carry this with me. The setup is mic in, mic out, desk. That's it. Very, very simple. And then just a little, you know, DC, what is it? Little power port right there. And that's it. So for this demonstration, we're just going to take the cable as it is directly from the mic. We're going to plug this in to number 1. Boom. There we go. Let's turn it on. Now, phantom power on. Okay, so that switch is red now to say that we have it. And, well, let's give this a little bit of, tiny bit of gain. Okay, so before I put you over near the speaker to get the most realistic sound, I'm going to play a little bit with this EQ. Yeah, okay. Did you see that little peak light flash then? So that means that it is a little bit too loud, and the signal is getting chopped because it's too loud. So we're going to bring the gain down a little bit more. A-okay. So next, the mid. Do I want it? Not really. Bass. Let's go to the low. See that peak again? Too much. Come down. This little effect dial is supposed to be for some reverb, but I'm not getting much from it. Oh, there it is. Haha. Sometimes I don't find the dial till later in the video. Okay. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so this time I'm going to try and do my best to simulate exactly what I do in a sound check for a live show. Too much reverb. Also a snare off sound. Okay, so we've almost made it through all of the steps. The last thing to talk about, I think, is Foldback. So the sound engineer might ask you, hey, Cajon player, what would you like in your Foldback speaker? If you're lucky enough to get your own. There might only be a couple, in which case the band has to all agree on what kind of mix comes through, right? So if you're a Cajon player and you've got your own speaker, great, you probably want to hear a lot of yourself. That's how I feel when I play. Reason for that is that when you can't hear yourself very well, that's a signal to your hands to hit harder, right? So you start playing even louder, and then in doing that you might also hurt your hands more because you're hitting too hard to achieve that. So what I love is getting a nice loud mix of myself so that I more naturally play a little bit softer, which keeps my hands in better condition and lets the drum possibly resonate a little bit more. When you're really beating it, sometimes it can really cut down the openness of the sound. Anyway, there are just a couple of things to consider. Of course, you might like to have some bass, or whatever else it is that you listen to in your band, whatever's most important for you, to know where you are in the song and what beat to play at what time. That's the important sound that you want in your Foldback. But I just love having a loud mix of myself because I can play a lot without having to hit very hard. Feels like you've got more power. It's great. Okay, so here's me with a very loud mix of myself coming back through the speakers, very much enjoying how even the softest hits come through nice and loudly, which is, I would say, thanks a great deal to the microphone that I'm using. Okay, I should stop. Alright, so I think we made it to the end of this video. I've covered, I think, everything that I know at this point in my career about live sound on stage. So some things that I would recommend trying. Number one is try getting yourself your own mic. You know what feels really good is when you always have your own mic, carrying it around to gigs with you, you always pretty much know how it's going to respond to your playing, and that's something that's really quite comfortable, I think, in having your own microphone. You know, singers do the same thing. I think as Cajon players, we could also do that. Another huge plus, actually, let me show you this. I can't believe I forgot to mention this. So before we had the microphone on this big old stand here, and you know how sometimes when you're playing, you want to lean back a little bit on the Cajon, and that causes all kinds of problems. You know, it's going to change the sound, you're going to knock the stand, and when you want to move the Cajon around the stage, well, that's even worse because you've got to move the stand every time you want to move the Cajon. But for some reason, if for some reason you need to move the Cajon somewhere else on the stage, particularly if there's more than one band playing, and you want to put it off to the side, well, it's great. Look at that, it's so easy to move your Cajon around. Even in the middle of a gig, if it feels like the right time to come up further to the front of the stage and you want to like set up here or here, that's why you got to put the mic inside the Cajon. I can't believe I forgot to mention that. Okay, so I really need to try and end this video, but I want to talk about one other thing, if that's okay. I do have a members club here on YouTube, so in addition to the normal 4 free lessons that we do every month, I think we're doing just about every week, there's a new lesson that goes out to everybody. I do also have members-only videos. Difference being is those lessons come with homework. You can complete the homework, send me a video of you doing it, I'll review it and share it out among the other members. It's a great little supportive community, I think. And it's a really good time right now. We're near the end of the month where I do the members-only live stream. And in the members-only live stream, I review all of the lessons for the month, and that includes the free lessons. So if you do have any questions that you want to ask about any of this stuff, join in the members group. There's a little join button underneath the video next to subscribe. Join, and then you can join the members live stream that should happen sometime between now and the end of the month. We're going to schedule it to meet a lot of different time zones if possible. So I'd love to have you join, and if you have any comments or questions about this video, as always, just leave them down below, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye. See you later.